Hello! Today I wanted to talk about types of research you, as a writer, should be doing. So there are 5 broad categories of research that you, as a writer, should be doing. I've actually scripted this, so I'm gonna go, say scripted, I've made notes. So I'm gonna go through it in, sorry if you can hear the tapping, it's her lapping up her kitten milk bribe to be good. Anyway, I'm going to go through them in what I think is potentially the order you should be doing them in, but it's also kind of, you can do them in pretty much any order. So thing number 1 is historical, cultural and psychological research. What do I mean? I mean looking at human history, looking at human psychology, looking at human culture throughout the ages. And I know I'm kind of biased because I do have a BA in classical studies, which is the study of ancient Greece and ancient Rome. And I am just naturally inclined towards looking at historical research. But I do think that looking at how we got where we are and the way that we used to be and like psychologically how humans work can be really beneficial for creating interesting and well thought out and convincing worlds and cultures. So, for example, if you want to write a bunch of aliens, it is well worth learning how we as humans developed into who we are today and how we theoretically would get to active space travel, so that you can do a similar thing for your aliens. Like, what is it about us that means that we tend to hug? Well, actually, interestingly, the reason that we tend to hug is twofold. 1, if you don't hug a baby enough, they will die. That's an actual thing that I learned. And 2, because we evolved from apes who therefore carry their children around, that is part of the reason, is because we are used to carrying a thing. Also, interesting fun fact, the reason that handedness exists, as in right and left-handedness exists, is because of carrying a baby next to the heart, which is why more people are right-handed than left-handed. Apparently, according to my research. Like, I don't know how much of this is like true, guaranteed, but ultimately with a lot of historical research, it's basically like, what do we know for sure? What do we think from that? So yeah, some really good stuff for that. What have I got here? What have I got here? I've got the Human Bone Manual. I think maybe that's a bit intense for most people. Handbook of British Archaeology. Looking at Greek vases. Oh, that'll do. This one's a good one. In Bed with the Romans. This one is one of my wife's research books. It's by Paul Crystal. And basically it's it's a book about Roman sex and sexuality and how they used it as part of their culture, how they used it as part of their conquering the world, and all sorts of things like that, and the sort of power dynamics of sex in the Roman Empire. It's not actually mine, it's my wife's book. She has a master's degree and her focus is on sex and sexuality in the ancient world. It's cool. She's cool. I love her. Anyway, so yeah, like looking at different things. Like if you want to write an empire, it is really valuable to look at empires that have existed in the real world, on our Earth as we know it. And a really great example of a book that does that really well is this one. This is a sci-fi book. It's called A Memory Called Empire. It was longlisted for the Guardian's Not the Booker Prize. By someone called Achilles Martin. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. And Achilles Martin is a pen name for a Byzantine scholar. Achilles Martin is a speculative fiction writer. As Dr. Anna Linden Weller, a historian of the Byzantine Empire and city planner. Under both names she writes about border politics, rhetoric, propaganda and the edges of the world. Arcady grew up in New York City and after some time in Turkey, Canada and Sweden, lives in Baltimore with her wife and author Vivian Shaw. Find her online at arcadymartin.net or on Twitter at arcadymartin. And the beauty of A Memory Called Empire is that it does really do a good job of creating this sci-fi empire. It literally transposes so much of the Byzantine Empire into space, and it's done so well, and it creates such a convincing and compelling narrative, because ultimately all of that world building has kind of already been done by, no thank you, by a historical person who actively tried to conquer the world. Like, so cool. So yeah, that's why I think it's useful. Thing number 2 that you should probably be researching as a writer is character. Is your cast just a bunch of solidified man milk, or did you actually write something representative of, you know, the world around us? What I mean by solidified man milk is, do they look like the cast of the Avengers? You failed to write an accurate portrayal of the world around us, because not everybody is white, not everybody is a man. Well done. The thing is if you're going to write a character who does not share the same kind of background to you, and I do say kind of, because ultimately we are writing fiction, and a lot of the time we are writing fantasy, and you're allowed to do weird things, and you're allowed to decide that you don't want to write a self-insert character. But ultimately, if you don't want to fall into harmful stereotypes about especially minority characters, you have got to do your research on how to do it. I have a whole series here on YouTube called How to Write LGBT Characters and Why You Should Anyway, and I'm constantly adding videos to that playlist, to that series. Sometimes they don't go on the playlist because I'm having troubles with YouTube right now. I do recommend you go and watch those videos if you want information on how to write LGBT characters and why you should anyway. And of course, if you have any research suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comments so people can find them easily. But it's not just about marginalisation. No. It's also other important things like, do they have positive traits? Do they have negative traits? What kind of job do they have? Are you researching that? Do they have some kind of injury? Have you researched it? You need to know everything. Well, not everything. You need to know enough stuff about your character to be able to build them up into a realistic type of person. Now, I will say here that in my short stories, I tend not to do this. The reason I tend not to do this is because I am throwing them together and they are usually around 1,000 words or less. And I know that some people would label that as flash fiction, but I don't want to, so I'm not going to. But yeah, so my short stories over on nopoodles.wordpress.com tend to be contained within, like the characters there tend to not be as well researched as characters in, for example, my book that's going to be coming out, hopefully before the end of the year. But ultimately, the longer your piece of narrative, the more research you have to do. The further removed your characters are from your own experience, the more research you have to do. Research type number 3, craft. You want to be a better writer. You do, it's just a fact. So you gotta look into writing craft. What's a good writing craft book? Nah, I wish I could tell you. Part of the reason that I make deciphering writing advice videos here on YouTube is because I'm constantly trying to improve my craft and constantly trying to understand what exactly people mean when they talk about writing advice. Monster! Like, what is the passive voice? What does it mean to write what you know? How do you show, don't tell? But it's not just that, it's also constantly learning about grammar, constantly learning about both of the things I've already said. Both of those do improve your writing craft. Experiment with things like, do I want to outline? Do I not want to outline? Because ultimately you'll never know if you're a plotter or a pantser or something else until you have tried all of the things. Thing number 4, genre research. This is not just genre, it's also age. Genre and age category research are important. You need to read in your genre and age category both. You need to look at the covers, you need to check the front and back matter to make sure that yours was going to match up and that you're prepared for yours to match up. You need to see if you can figure out trends before they happen and jump on them before they happen. You need to see everything about your genre. You need to know it, you need to understand it, you need to be able to replicate it. And you need to be able to turn it on its head in exactly the right way that means that you are going to be doing well, but still fitting in. You need to stand out enough to stand out, but not so much that no one's going to pick up your book. And thing number 5 that you should be researching as a writer is publishing. Are you going to be self-publishing? Traditional publishing? Hybrid publishing? Are you as yet undecided? Research all of the things. Make an informed decision. Don't just think, oh, I'm going to traditionally publish because it means I don't have to pay up front. Because, well, as much as you don't have to pay up front, you do still have to pay for all your marketing, and they may not pay for very much at all. Are you self-publishing? Are you aware that you will have to pay for everything up front? Do you know how much is involved in each of these things? What exactly do you want from publishing? How does that fit into your publishing plan? And like, the trends in publishing are always changing and always adapting. What? The trends in publishing are always adapting and always changing. So you need to be aware of them. You need to be aware of those changes, those adaptations. Please don't jump on the bookshelves. Ow. You need to be aware of those trends in publishing. You need to be able to follow those trends and those expectations. You need to be able to do it well. If you intend to traditionally publish, you need to get a handle on a query letter, which means writing a query letter for everything, even if you haven't finished it yet. Try it, do it, practice, get better, so that when you finally get around to querying, it's a good query and not a half-baked query. Because the thing is, the better your query is, the more likely you are to get representation. And that's why so many traditionally published authors end up not getting an agent until their 4th or 5th book, is because the practice of writing and attempting query letters and getting feedback on those query letters, even if that feedback is just a form rejection or no response at all, is the thing that helps them improve. They realise, right, well, that didn't work, what can I do instead? Practicing with self-publishing can include things like putting your work out there on the internet for people to see, and I will be making a video about this at some point, but I'm not sure when as yet, because, you know, timelines. So those are my 5 broad categories for what kinds of research you should be doing. I'm just going to run through them super quick for you once again. Historical, cultural and psychological, character, craft, genre and age category, and publishing in general. I do think that the best resource for most of these things is on the internet, because the thing is as things change and update, as we learn new things about the world, as you need new things about character, and as, you know, we change terminologies and we change preferences, as you learn new things about craft, as we all decide new things about writing craft, as the genre changes and updates as time passes, and as publishing changes and updates because whimsy, I guess. All of this stuff, you need to be as up to date as possible on all of it, including, well, yeah, just including all of it. All of it. You need to be up to date and with the most recent knowledge on all of these different things. So I do think the internet is one of the best resources you can access, because not only is it, I'm going to say free, but like, you pay for your internet subscription unless you go to the library, in which case it's free. But not only is it basically a free resource, rather than having to buy hundreds of thousands of books, like you can also use the library, but the internet is constantly updating, and you can easily see the date that most things were posted. So like, if you're looking at a video from 5 years ago that says how to publish your book on CreateSpace, that's of no use to you because CreateSpace doesn't exist anymore. And therefore, looking at stuff that is less than 3 years old is the most valuable thing you can do. The thing is, as well, as like, some people are going to be there like, well, historical research, it can't be less than 3 years old to get the most accurate information. You're wrong. The interesting thing about academia is that academia itself is quite a toxic environment. We're not going to talk about that. But we are in academia, the whole point of academia is that you are constantly learning and updating theories. Like, there's constantly uncoverings of new information about the past that change our viewpoint on it. As we adapt as a society and start looking at things in different ways, we then start to see the past in different ways also. And I'm going to use an example here, even though I've been talking for a while, and the example I am going to use is Achilles and Patroclus from the Iliad. As I said, I do have a BA in classical studies. I have studied the Iliad as part of my degree. So, in the Iliad, Achilles and Patroclus are presented in a very coupley manner. They live in the same tent, they look after each other. When Patroclus dies, spoilers for thousands of years old book, but when Patroclus dies, Achilles goes into a huge grief rage. Way back when it was illegal to be gay, they were bonded as brothers. As attitudes have updated, it is still hard to argue that they were together because of two big reasons. One, academia is very toxic and it's hard to argue with people who are dead. So even though, and I have actually had this from a doctoral professor, as in someone who's got more than a PhD in this, that if Achilles and Patroclus were a man and a woman, there is no doubt that they would be considered a couple. Fact. Because they are two men, there's a lot more question marks. So despite that, it's hard to argue with people who are long dead, and just then, like, the attitudes of the past still influence where we are now. The second reason that Achilles and Patroclus are not considered absolutely and without argument a couple is because they do not present in the manner that we are used to seeing Greek men loving men presenting. Patroclus is older than Achilles. Patroclus in the Iliad has a beard. Achilles in the Iliad doesn't. Achilles in the Iliad, or pre-Iliad, could pass himself off as a woman and no one could see past it, including Odysseus, who is supposed to be wily and cunning, and the best liar in the business. So, feminine Achilles. We'll look at his physical form and go, well, he's very feminine. Patroclus, on the other hand, man. Butch, buff, bearded man. So you're thinking, well, that seems to fit in the Erastus or Romanos model, right? Except behaviour-wise, they don't. And that's the problem, is behaviour-wise, Patroclus is taking care of the house. He's cooking the meals, he's doing the, and I'm going to put this in bunny ears, feminine activities. Or feminine coded activities. And Achilles is the strong one, he's the best in a fight, he's all of those things. It doesn't fit the Erastus or Romanos model. So that is the other reason that people don't tend to think that they are in a relationship. Which is, it's frustrating. But we are constantly evolving and updating our knowledge, including historical knowledge. So you do want to make sure that your sources are less than 3 years old where possible. And that is actually something that I also learnt at university when I was trying to research my information, is that if you're going to have an older source, you need to have a modern source that cites that older source as still accurate or some kind of accurate. You can't argue with someone who wrote their book 50 years ago. You need to do it, well, in academia it's 10 years or less, but in publishing and books you definitely want to go 3 years or less. So I hope you found this helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Think about subscribing to the channel if you want to see more deciphering writing advice, how to write LGBT characters and why you should anyway, and my self-publishing journey and all things, you know, writing and queer life. If you want, you can follow me on Instagram. I am at nopoodles. There are links to everything in the description box below. Keep your eyes peeled for my book. It should be out before the end of the year if all goes well. We are waiting, endlessly waiting. And if you would like to support me and what I do, there's a link to my Ko-fi account in the description below. And all of my videos are from the last 3 years or less. More kitten milk. Ada! Ada! Yeah, do you want some more? I don't know why she's not sleeping. It's very frustrating. Anyway. Part of the reason I part of the reason I make my deciphering writing a video, part of the reason I, Ella, let go, thank you. Oh, nibbles! Are you overexcited?